Welcome to Beyond Revenue, Narratives of Revenue Leaders. Today I have a special guest directly from Chicago, USA. Lisa, you started your career actually in consulting, I saw, and then moved into sales and marketing, did a lot of RevOps in LinkedIn, which I'm quite interested in your experience there. And now you're leading the B2B team of Grover as a CRO. Welcome to the show. And maybe you can quickly present yourself and what are your responsibilities at Grover.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Michael. So, as you said, a little bit about me. Right now, I am the Chief Revenue Officer of the B2B organization here at Grover. And before that, I guess a little bit about my journey. Yes, I did start in consulting once upon a time, and it has been quite the journey, both through startups as well as enterprise. And most recently, before that at LinkedIn, I started with RevOps, as you mentioned, pivoted though from, loving the numbers, but wanting to take on a leadership role. So pivoted to lead sales development teams across Asia, as well as moving back to the US, where I'm based right now, leading the sales teams across the central and eastern part of the States. And when Grover came a knocking with the fantastic plan that they had set in place and also just what they're delivering to their customers, I jumped on board here at Grover to lead our global sales teams, as well as all the monetization and go-to-market of the B2B business. So it's been a fantastic journey so far.
Congrats on your interesting CV. I can see you always developed in each organization, which shows how good you are. So very interested in our conversation. Starting with one question: why is your role important in your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of Grover, we are on a fast pace of growth, and I guess just a little. Do you mind if I just tell a little bit of history of Grover and what it is, and then
Absolutely,
how my
please.
role in B2B fits in? So, Grover in itself has been on a rocket ship since 2015 in its founding, and just a little bit of background on Grover. So, you may or may not have heard that Grover was founded back originally as a B2C startup, which was servicing consumers to allow them to rent tech for the time they want with flexible contracts. This was satisfying just how consumers were consuming tech. So, at an astronomical rate, we have found that tech is refreshing itself and evolving each and every year. And consumers as well weren't looking to just buy a device and then keep it through the length of its shelf life. So Grover came along and offered sustainable, flexible, and affordable rental options to consumers, and has taken off, in the past several years. And B2B, which is the organization which I've been hired to spearhead, started to grow organically off the back of B2C, where suddenly businesses were trying to sign up actually on Grover before we even offered B2B. And, we were like, why is that going on? But found that businesses were looking for something similar, where especially startups at the beginning, which was our, more of our initial ICP, didn't want to spend a whole bunch of cash up front because cash is precious, especially in today's environment. And instead, found that Grover was a solution to some of their problems on being able to just spend what they need. And if they, quickly scale up or have to scale down, we allow that flexibility. So back to your question, Michael, on why my role is important is
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to say we are very happy client of your B2B services. Actually, I think since 4 years almost, or 3.5 years, so very early using this flexibility and be able to
that's
scale with
fantastic,
it.
Michael. I'm glad to hear.
So sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So yeah, why is your role important to your organization? Thanks for the background.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of what my role is B2B has a slightly different go-to-market than our larger B2C, as you can imagine. And they needed an individual to come to Grover in order to spearhead growth of the B2B business. B2B, you can probably imagine, is more profitable right now than our B2C organization, and is growing at the fastest rate. There are some economies of scale there, of course, with each business customer renting more at each go than your average B2C organization. So, what my role entails is gathering and leading our sales organization, which didn't necessarily have an established leader before, and really just carving out and putting a little bit more thought on the strategy of the go to market. Because before we were kind of rinsing and repeating a lot of the B2C pieces and leveraging. However, what our customers needed on the B2B side was slightly different. How you acquire a B2B customer is different. So, thinking through what is our true ICP? We were kind of like going with the flow at some point, but how do we carve out actually who is making us money, who we should more aggressively go after, and maybe some of the segments where maybe we don't, just kind of like place the ball down. Of course, not neglect, but like place the ball down a little bit. So it's definitely been a multi-pronged strategic focus thus far.
Very interesting. I can imagine. On the one side, quite complex. On the other side, a lot of potential there. You're focusing mainly with the B2B in the US, or is it already worldwide?
So actually, B2B in the US is a relatively new endeavor. So that launched about 1 year ago. So just
Hmm.
slightly before I arrived at Grover, and have been part of that journey to spearhead and build out the sales team here. So when I arrived, it was actually only 2 reps, and we're continuing to
Okay,
scale here and acquire
interesting.
customers.
Very interesting. So let's zoom out a little bit on the role on the CRO. So from your experience from the different or various organizations you have seen, how do you see the role as CRO in general?
Yes. So the CRO role is quite interesting, actually. So when I first entered into this whole sales RevOps world, that role, maybe I had heard of it, maybe not. But when I double clicked on it, it had been around a while, but it's evolved quite a bit. So the CRO role, I think, traditionally was thought of as just the most senior salesperson at an organization,
Hmm.
where maybe it was more of like the ABCs of sales, like always be closing, meeting customers, just looking for each and every quarter and hitting your target. But as time evolved and as technology has evolved, it's become a lot more complex, where a CRO role, in my opinion, is really someone who marries all the go to market functions. So there might be a CMO at the organization, maybe not, but it's really partnering with the CMO organization, the sales organization, customer success sometimes as well, and placing the customer in the center of all of this. And while doing so, really double clicking on the data. It's become a very data driven role where, day in and day out, you are looking at numbers, ensuring that you're optimizing strategic decisions, both on like customer segments, sales headcount investment, marketing investment, etc.
Perfect explanation. This makes it very complex because I see a lot of potential in the role of CRO. In Europe, it's just developing. It's not as popular than in the US. But the complexity, especially when you're not only focusing on sales but really focusing on all customer function and planning the dependency, makes it on the one side hard, but on the other side very interesting. I think so.
Mhm.
Coming to my next question, how do you establish revenue targets and for the individual roles, but then as an organization or as the B2B as a whole? So, and what are your strategies um, that you can follow up with them and the teams reach their goals?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very interesting question, Michael. I actually saw a meme about this the other day where it was like the board telling like the VP of sales, like, you must do this number or something like that.
Mhm.
And then the number just being pushed down to the frontline sales reps. So, there's stories and maybe like horror stories a little bit about that. But the reality is it's a little bit of both. Like a great planning cycle requires, in my opinion, both a tops down. Of course, you're still going to get this number. You've got your board, your CEO, everyone else that expects a certain amount of growth out of you. But at the same time, there is the reality. It's the role of the CRO and the leaders within that team to truly understand like what can be delivered with the resources that you have and what resources do you need in order to hit this, either pie in the sky number, something in between, or whatever else. And, depending upon your team, if you have sales, marketing, anything else, really start to build up what that means to that number. So you go through, I'll just deep dive on the sales piece right now. You generally know, your sales reps, how much revenue each headcount brings in and by what market. But again, it's not art and it's not just science, it's also art where, let's say you need to grow by 20 million and each sales rep brings in 1 million. You don't just do like 1 million times 20 because there's diminishing returns. And that's where that bottoms up comes in, where talking to not just your sales leads, but sales managers, and asking them, like, okay, if your team were to need to bring in this number, exactly what would you need? And of course, you still have your RevOps team running the numbers on the side, but it is important just to get that frontline perspective because there might be something that you missed in the numbers. And
Fair.
getting their buy-in as well, because with the sales team, there's a lot of the mentality of like, what can you truly achieve and commit to?
Absolutely. Yeah, interesting. And I think the combination of both and then the buy-in is in the end, right, is the in the end makes the difference. If you have the buy-in of the team and they really believe in their goals and I would say they had a kind of perceived control as well
Say,
in it, right? Or
hmm
saying,
perceived control. Yeah.
is yeah, it's like, they obviously they have saying, but then if they're part of it or already they feel a kind of control. And that's why I think this already helps that everybody's pushing at the same goal because it must be, right? It's quite hard, right? That you align all of them and then they all need to function as they work hand in hand on the customer lifecycle. When do you manage them on daily? What metrics do you use to measure success of the individual teams? When you think
Yeah.
about your key roles.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say I divide metrics into three different buckets. So there's the true north metrics, which generally are, like your ARR revenue. Sometimes they could be some like leading metrics that really are key that you need to hit. And then I divide into leading as well as lagging metrics. So lagging, some of the things when you say to drive the team in particular, there's headcount productivity, how many reps hit quota, average
Hmm.
deal size, number of logos. It's the type of stuff at the end of the quarter, end of the month that you look at. And then on a daily and weekly basis, like when you get more sophisticated, it's really nailing down your leading indicators and what those conversion rates are through the funnel. So the funnel, of course, is always front and top of mind. So often looking at everything that's coming in from the marketing team in terms
Hmm.
of marketing leads, orders submitted, the conversion rate on those orders, how many of them have paid, how many are sales leads, how many are going directly to channel. So just like really looking through that top of funnel in terms of leading indicators.
Interesting. Do you look at the dependencies as well? So let's say your marketing team needs to generate a certain number, and you already see what could lead to capacity issues in, I don't know, SDR, AE roles, or even customer success. Is it things
Yeah.
the RevOps team is looking at, or how does this? What is your perspective, at least, to this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely something where you have to match. I think back to what I was saying, the marketing and the sales. So if your marketing team is stepping up on investment, you need to make sure that you have that SDR team to catch leads.
Mm.
I would say perhaps in a past life as well, getting very sophisticated on this, on knowing exactly the types of leads, and knowing the ebbs and flows. We would look at it every single week in terms of the leads that come in from like events and webinars. You have a little bit more time to answer versus those that come directly to your site, like the call me now contact sales, where
Hmm.
we would know exactly how many leads per day an SDR could handle. And of course, in terms of capacity and product profitability, you don't want too many headcount, because then you're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
paying and losing money and also just causing frustration and morale issues on the team. But then
Fair.
at the same time, don't want headcount to or have too little, because actually the time to answer those marketing leads, I think there was a very interesting Harvard study on that if you even like triple the time to like over 5 minutes or something like that, that your conversion rates plummet dramatically.
Yeah, it drops tremendously. I think I
Mhm.
saw one, if you answer within 5 minutes or after
Mhm.
20, it already goes, I don't know,
Yes,
10
yes.
times lower or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
ridiculous number.
precisely. Mhm.
Yeah, interesting, because I think that's the right, and that's why I like your background in the from the ref ops part.
Mhm.
You look at it differently than you're purely looking at sales, and I think
Mhm. Mhm.
combining is a
Mhm.
very interesting view on it. Let's talk a little bit about technology. What role does technology play in building a robust revenue architecture, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's fascinating how fast technology has evolved as well. So sales has become incredibly advanced in terms of the number of tools that a rep, and I mean, I can even pivot to the marketing side, like the number of tools that are available. So in terms of the architecture that we use at Grover, I'll just walk through that one. Is like we have all the outbound and SDR softwares that take away some of the manual work of, finding, like old school someone's phone number. So, we have all the Zoom infos and the outreaches of the world to really automate a lot of that search for your best customer.
Mm.
And then saving the sales rep, him or herself, for the true work of, pitching the value, getting folks on the phone, and really leading them through the sales journey. So it's fantastic to see that evolution, and even more recently with AI coming into the picture to really identify and hone in on the customers that will convert for you. And then again, like there's tons of power all the way through when it comes to CRM usage and beyond.
Yeah, that's true. Can you name challenges you're facing when technology? What so when you decide on right? I'm totally with you. The last 3 years is tremendously amount of tools came to the market. Some I would say quite relevant. Some on the first side they look good, and then you use them, and then it's gonna get hard. So what challenges you see within this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the tools are fantastic. You watch the demos and they're brilliant, and you're like, wow, I'm going to
That's
grab this
true.
for my sales team, and everyone's going to be so much more productive.
Yeah.
But I would say the toughest challenge is less with the tools, but more with like people and driving change. And that's a leadership piece with
Mm.
frontline sales managers, is really adoption and the correct usage of tools. Change is hard for humans. We're not robots. We can't
Absolutely.
just like turn on and start using, your brand new CRM or whatever is there. But, I would say challenge number one would be to truly get people using the tools correctly, and putting all the data into the CRM, for example. It sounds mundane. I mean, no one loves, entering data into their CRM, but at the end, it becomes incredibly powerful in correct usage across all the rest of the tools. I would probably say, if you want to talk about a more technical standpoint in terms of challenges, like some of that has to do with just some of the integration and how the tools talk to one another,
Mm.
and ensuring that the data that you put in there is also something that is relevant. So you could have, a Lamborghini, but if you're pouring, water into it, it's not gonna
That's true.
run.
I
Yeah.
think the structuring of it, so how to use it, and then definitely enablement or really
Mhm.
adoption of the team. I
Yep.
think there's when the company has a good RevOps focus, this can definitely help and plan it out. But yeah, I'm with you. Let's talk about a big mistake in your CRO career. So what wrong decision have you taken, and what did you learn from it? Right, the audience is B2B. Some of them already have a CRO. Some planning on implementing a CRO role. So would if you share some learning would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a big learning of mine very recently that I've been reflecting on was actually, ensuring that you're truly keeping the customer at the center. Usually, everyone knows that you're supposed to do that, but right now we're operating in a relatively competitive environment, and I was trying to keep my thumb on the pulse of competitors. So I was recently, I would say, maybe even over focused on what the competition is doing. And you can be
Hmm.
easily sucked into that, where you see in these competitive, fast paced environments that this competitor is doing this, and this other, company is doing that, and they have this bell and whistle on their product, but then they're all doing that. So then we need to do that too. And we need to make sure we don't fall behind. And you can get very caught up in this cycle of what is your competitor doing? Again,
Hmm.
it's important to know what your competition is doing, but not becoming too obsessive, because actually where the truth lies, which I had to recenter myself on, is always with your customer. So like, know what your competition is doing, but check back, because sometimes everyone is running in the wrong direction. And there's something in strategy called the basis of competition. I don't know if you've heard of it, but what it basically is really defining where you truly compete not necessarily
Hmm.
what everyone else is doing. Like that could just be where you're good enough at. And I think a pretty cool story about this is actually with Amazon, which I had to remind myself is they wanted to be this great marketplace that they are today. And there were several other players in the space, but what Amazon did instead of paying attention to what all their competitors were doing was actually realizing that their customers loved fast shipping and then doubled down on fast shipping and basically restructured or built like what the basis of competition was for online shopping. We're
Fair.
fast shipping
That's
now
true.
and free shipping. So I'm like, all right, Lisa, like, actually what the customers are saying are telling the truth. So refocus your decisions on that.
Very interesting learning. Yeah, I would say as better, right? As better you are structures and better you understand the needs of your clients, as better you can serve them, right? We see a lot
Absolutely.
of companies focusing on little features, right? Then they have this one feature and it sounds good, and then they're focusing on over communicating around it, but it's sometimes around the client. And then I would say the most companies, there will be a lot of competitors in the future on the market, right? On all these softwares, it's multiple players playing around. And I would say it's better you understand really your clients, so it's better you can serve them and listen to them. You can find things which makes the difference. So
Yeah.
thanks for that
Yeah.
learning. That's very
Absolutely.
interesting.
And I would probably say too, just one other thing is the CRO role is really in the driver's seat, or even just in the front row of what's actually occurring with your customers, because you've got your field, your entire sales team, as well as maybe your customer success team, listening every single day to customers. And if you have tools like Gong,
Mm.
some companies have it, some don't, being able to really hear and see the different patterns of what customers are asking and demanding. And sure, like there's other organizations like Product and everyone else that does listening sessions, but the truth is really with those that are on the phones like each and every day. So like
Absolutely.
it,
And as you're right, as you're leading the all customer facing roles, you can get the different feedbacks from different perspectives. And you as a CRO bring it together and then come really take your learnings out of it, right? Because I think sometimes even individual roles, they get a feedback and then it's already the truth. But if you get it from different angles, from different views, I think it's very interesting. And that's why I'm totally with you. I would say the CRO role in itself can, if set up correctly, do a lot of learning and really optimize how you serve your clients. Um, let's talk a little bit about modern revenue leadership. I start again. Let's talk about modern revenue leadership. What's your opinion? Where is a common mistake or common misconception about revenue leadership in the market or in your environment? What do you see here?
Yep. So I would probably say the misconception is that, similar to what I mentioned before, that revenue leadership is the sales leader that is just talking to your largest customers and helping close deals.
Fair.
However, it's changed quite a bit. Like it's not just the sales leader, it's really someone that harmonizes both the sales function, marketing function, bringing people and data and measurement and all of that together to build the best go to market engine that that person possibly can for your company. So it's changed both in terms of breadth across different types of functions and can be unique.
Mhm.
It's not the same at every company, and then also just the depth of which numbers and data and all of that power the decision making behind it.
Absolutely true. And one last question: how do you see the role as a CRO evolving in the future? Right, there's more technology, there's more speed on the market. Do you see any changes, or do you see any change in responsibilities or more focus on it? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I would probably say, a lot of the tactical pieces are moving away, but I do find that as a CRO, you have to be more in tune to all the changes in the market, knowing what technologies are coming to help empower your sales and marketing and success teams, and bringing that faster than anyone else can. Back to competitors, even though not listening to them too much, but still just staying ahead with
Mm,
all of that change. And then even with the tactical pieces moving away, it's really, bringing the need for that strategic mindset to the forefront on really like how are you planning not just each quarter and each half and each year, but bringing that, very, very long term roadmap to your organization.
Interesting. Maybe one last question to you, as you're so experienced in RevOps as well. Um, what advice would you give a company when they want to establish a CRO-led organization, RevOps, and all? What steps or what would you advise them from your opinion? What should they focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, in terms of where you're focusing first, assuming that they have like a head of sales and maybe a small RevOps organization, is really trying to determine maybe even before you hire that CRO, like what is your general go to market? Maybe you don't fully know, but when you're hiring that person, are you doubling down on marketing, sales? Is it more product led? And then particularly hiring for that background to bring the team to the next level. But back to just like what are the first steps in terms of like getting that sales and RevOps engine running? I would say in terms of sales, just really double downing on those who you're hiring, those first hires for your sales team, or maybe if you're refreshing your sales team too, getting people that have that energy, that drive, that motivation, maybe even less so on the sales skills because you're going to hire senior leaders to teach
Mm.
others. So just hire for that pure raw talent. And then when you're hiring that CRO or maybe VP of sales, like they can instill, all the like med pick and everything else for that team.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And in terms of RevOps, I think there are just some of the basics of really nailing, I think, like the commission model right off the bat, getting quotas right, because that can like completely deflate morale if you're not getting that correct, and really thinking through like your ICP territory.
Lisa, thank you very much for your time and sharing of your knowledge. It was very interesting conversation, and I took a lot with me. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Cheers.
Cheers.